Hi, thank you for joining me for Tuesday Talks with Unsilenced Voices. My name is Michelle Jewsbury. If this is your first time tuning in, thank you. This was created to open up the conversation about domestic violence, to talk about what really goes on behind closed doors here in the United States and in other countries. I was involved in a very violent relationship for a cumulative of 4 years. And because of that relationship, it's propelled me to move forward, start a nonprofit, do these talks, and hopefully open the eyes of a lot of people about what really is going on, especially in third world countries. So today's topic is how long has domestic violence really been going on? And when I was doing research, I was really shocked with the results. I didn't really understand and realize that beating your wife was legal. And it was legal all throughout the world, including the United States of America, up until very recently, actually. And what's interesting is there's a lot of countries who are, say, 100, 200 years behind the United States in growth, in economic growth, and structure. What's interesting to me is less than 200 years ago, it was legal to beat your wife here in the US. So no wonder why in third world countries, people think it's okay for a man to beat their woman because they disobeyed them on something minor even. So I'm going to use today's Tuesday talk as an educational tool for a lot of you listening. I'm going to go through some statistics and some of the research that I was able to uncover. So I used the website, the Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Violence, to look up a lot of these stats. So in 753 BC, during the reign of Romulus in Rome, wife beating was accepted and condoned under the law because a husband was found liable for all the crimes that his wife committed. So in order to keep them in line, the husband was supposed to beat them. In the 1500s, Lord Hale, an English jurist, sets the tradition of non-recognition of marital rape, which means that if a husband marries a wife and she accuses him of rape, it wasn't considered rape because he was married to her. They stated that the women gave themselves to their husband for any and all reasons that the husband wanted to use them for. So it wasn't considered rape. 1500s. Fast forward a little bit. 1824, a decision by the Mississippi Supreme Court allows a husband to administer only moderate chastise in cases of emergency. So really what this is saying is in 1824, it was stated in the United States that you could beat your wife as long as it wasn't severe. Now, define severe. I think that punching your wife once or slapping her or pushing her to the ground or criticizing her and yelling at her and spitting on her, I think that that's severe enough. Wonder what they actually thought severe was. Fast forward to 1871. Alabama is the first state to rescind the legal right of men to beat their wives. And in 1882, Maryland is the first state to pass a law making wife beating a crime. So 1882, and it's now 2017. This is less than 200 years ago in the United States. It was legal to beat your wife. In 1945, California states that a husband who beats their wife, resulting in a traumatic condition, is found guilty for a felony. A traumatic condition. So again, this also went back to it was okay to slap your wife or spit on her or push her or degrade her and tell her that she wasn't good enough and use all the forces that he had to make her do whatever he wanted, to make her obey him like she was property. In the early 1970s, the women's liberation movement begins in the United States, and U.S. shelters are finally constructed. 1970. In 1978, Less than half of all the shelters receive any state or federal funding. So that means shelters were finally being constructed in the 70s. And then in 1978, still the state or federal government didn't want to help these shelters, didn't want to help these women who were fleeing husbands, who were beating them, who were molesting their children and sexually assaulting them and their kids. Finally, in 1993, which is 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago, the United Nations recognizes domestic violence as an international human rights issue and issues a declaration on the elimination of violence against women. Finally, in 1993, this happened. In 1994, violence against women is passed by Congress. It's an act, the Violence Against Women Act, here in the United States. And then in 1995, as all of you know, O.J. Simpson was acquitted of murdering Nicole Simpson. But in 1997, he is found liable for her death, and it is ordered to pay the family $33 million. Now, like I said, I used today as an educational tool just to provide information on really how long domestic violence has been going on. It's been going on since before Christ, and it still continues. There's a lot of shelters that have been constructed here in the United States, not so many in third world countries. There have been acts passed, there have been movements created, but we really need to put a stop to this. And in order to actually put a stop, people need to open up and talk about what's happening, to really express themselves. These women who are in abusive relationships, especially in third world countries, need to stand up and rise against their husbands. All right, well, that's it for today. Thank you for joining me on Tuesday Talks.